Charlie. Mark, 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze. T-minus 37 seconds.
Spike is growing confidence.
E equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Tear down this world.
Something's happening, coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode of Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Ryan Treasure, and you're tuned into voiceamerica.com, the leader in live internet talk radio. We've been on the airwaves nonstop, 24/7 since 1999, going on year 21. So super excited that we're going on year 21 in 2020, because as you guys know, 2020 is a fantastic year. It's one of those things where you got weird numerology things happening throughout the year, and we get it's a leap year. All these things. We're going to be voting for a new president this year. Just a whole slew of new things coming in 2020. Brand new decade. I woke up January 1st and I said, it's a new minute. It's a new hour. It's a new year. It's a new decade. It's a new all kinds of things. So super excited about 2020. As we transition from our daily working lives and our 9 to 5s, or if you're an entrepreneur, you're not working 9 to 5. You're probably still up from last night working on stuff that you started, because we know how all that works. But stress kind of plays a factor in everybody's mood and your behavior and your ability to really connect with your own family and friends, and I think a lot of times people get so caught up in business and in life and in those things that they forget about some things that's very important. Your mental well-being is extremely important. We've talked about physical well-being and making sure that if you work in an office, you're going to your chiropractor and getting your adjustments on, and if you're into some of those alternative medicines, maybe you're getting some acupuncture and some of these things to really, help lift your spirits from a physical standpoint. But, what do you do on a daily basis to really, take care of the most important muscle in your body, which is your brain, right? And so we have a great and fantastic expert who's going to be joining us today. Dr. Laurel Mellin, who's a New York Times best-selling author, health psychologist, associate clinical professor, and also she is just a fantastic person. She's been a faculty member of UCSF for more than 30 years, and her work has been featured on the KQED, Public Television, Oprah Today, Good Morning America, U.S. News and World Reports, and a whole bunch of other online and broadcast facilities. And her last 2 books are The Stress Eating Solution and The Stress Overload Solution, which gives the public an opportunity to experience a 30-day step-by-step way to learn how to become emotional superstars and move through stress to joy. I have to quote my good friend Barry Shore, who does a show on the network, and he says it's the joy of living. And so we're going to talk about the joy of living today with Dr. Mellin. Dr. Mellin, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Ryan. I love your program. Thanks for including me.
Yes, thank you. I know that, being a clinical professor and, working at the School of Medicine and doing all of these fantastic things, you're a very busy person. So we appreciate you taking time to jump on the show with us today. And, finding your frequency is all about that journey. It's all about that, that it factor, that how factor, that why factor. We always talk about, living a life full of purpose. And one of the questions we always like to ask all of our people that come on to the Finding Your Frequency program, is Dr. Mellin, how did you find your frequency in life and in business and decide to do what you're doing?
I believe in that sometimes your frequency finds you or your purpose finds you, because you come alive, you go out in the world, and all of a sudden something rocks your world. And that happened for me when I first started as a young faculty member at UCSF, and I was working with overeating in kids. And I was so frustrated because putting kids on diets, that's ridiculous. And so I went deep inside the medical literature and found an old study that said the reason there are all these appetites is people aren't emotionally connecting. So I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to teach people to emotionally connect, just simple tools. And we didn't even have the brain science to support it. I saw a kid say, oh my gosh, I stopped overeating. And the mother says, this kid's happy because she's emotionally connected. I want what she has. So I didn't have the brain science to know why this kid had completely changed just by using these emotional tools. But I promised myself I would dedicate my career to it. And what a ride it's been. It's been the most exciting career. And I'm telling you, I understand overworking. I understand passion. And the reason I wrote these 2 books recently is because the science makes it so simple now to figure out what's going on inside of you. And the kind of people that are passionate enough and driven enough to actually be entrepreneurs, to push the envelope, to really be there and use stress effectively to do something in the world, what happens is there's only 2 frequencies for them. And that's what's important. They have the reptilian brain, evolutionarily we started with reptilian brain and we evolved up to a thinking brain, right? So we've got this beautiful thinking brain that keeps us in control and focus and have purpose, but enough stress comes in and we flip the switch and we go down to the reptile and we don't even know it's happened. And what this work does is have you flip it back. So you're back to that state of connection and you don't have to live in those excesses, trading one addiction for another.
Yeah, we always talk about my daughter on this show, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is, her and I are always having this conversation of, don't allow your emotions to dictate your logic. Don't let your emotions, and you talk about the reptilian brain and being able to kind of flip that switch. I think there's a paradigm there where, if you live your life based on emotion, then you're not making sound judgments. You're not using logic, and so I think switching that into a brain where you can make logical decisions, you can think through complex problems and solve some of these things is extremely important because what else are we here to do? I mean, we're not here to sit around and watch soap operas and television and Hulu and Netflix our whole life and melt away into the couch. I think everybody is here for a purpose, and how do we live that purpose and make sure that our brain is available for us to be able to live that purpose?
And just what you're saying, Ryan, is the greatest discovery in neuroscience in the last 10 years. And that is, in the past, when it was back, let's say the 1980s, 1990s, even up to 2000, the overall stress level was low enough so that the thinking brain could stay online and think beautiful thoughts, stay connected to emotions, but not let them overrule them. And then right around 2000, things started to change, and then they got more and more so. So it's not just people who had adverse childhood events, although that makes it harder, or later trauma, but everyone is subjected to this huge stress overload from technology and competition. So we have that stress coming into our brain, and it just gets to a point where it flips a switch and we're down to the reptile. And this is the major learning. If you remember one thing from this program, it's you can't think your way from stress to joy. You can't even exercise your way from stress to joy or eat healthy from stress to joy. It's a brain thing. And the old-fashioned emotions that we used to have, like just saying, how do I feel? It simply is not enough to switch off the reptilian brain. And the reason that we have emotional brain training and these new books out is because there are very simple skills that are absolutely universal that take your stressed out emotions like anxiety, depression, stomach aches, procrastination, and it switches them off, and it's through the pathway of a new kind of emotional tool that actually gets you from stress to joy in a couple minutes. And we believe everyone needs this because if you're stuck in stress, that's when problems arise.
Well, yeah, you can't get anything done if you're so stressed out. I mean, it's almost like a never ending circle, right? You get stressed out, you're working on a project, you're so stressed out, then you can't use your brain to go, okay, let me prioritize these things that I have to do. And it's so funny. Like I spend my Mondays, when we have meetings and stuff, when we come into the studio and we're kind of like looking at what we do. And, Monday's not my day for going, okay, I'm going to go tackle a project. Monday's my day to go, okay, I have an entire week full of things that I need to get done and multiple projects that I'm working on. Which ones are more important than other ones, right? And making a concerted effort to prioritize those things that are important. So that way, you're not living this circle, right? And then, you made a huge point. The world today, and you said 2000. I'm going to say 2006. And the reason I say 2006 is because that's when you got, these things came out, right? And you had all these smartphones, and now everybody's so hyper connected. It's just it boggles my mind that I can be sitting here in my office, right? And some coworker that I work with is literally, let's say, 33 steps away from walking in here to have a conversation with me. But they make the decision to, I'm going to send him a text message from my office to their office, or I'm going to send them a message on Skype, or I'm going to send them a message on Facebook Messenger or direct message on Twitter. There's just so many avenues of hyperconnectedness that's happening because of the smartphone that, where do you say enough is enough? Like, come on, let my brain do what my brain does. Cause I literally can't handle, if I didn't answer your text message in 5 minutes, now you're sending me another message from a different mechanism. And I'm like, at this point now, I don't even want to talk to you because you've sent me so many messages. Like, why is everybody I need to do it and I need to do it now.
Exactly. Because that's stress. The reptile is not patient. And what happens is we get really, really stressed and we develop a habit down in the reptilian brain. Like we develop a habit to go into anxiety or go into always being on edge or being depressed or eating sugar or coming up with another idea and another idea and another idea and not finishing anything. And these wires in the brain are what we have to go over. In other words, you can be even a little bit stressed, and if you've got these big old wires in your reptilian brain that get you triggered. Have you had the feeling of being triggered where you feel like you're doing fine, and then the next moment you're sort of on overload, that feeling? Yeah, everybody has that. Everyone has that. And most people have a triggered mood where they get triggered into hostility or numbness or depression or anxiety, and you can't relax your way out of it. You might get into a relationship where you tend to distance and hide out or become amazingly needy. And lots of times couples, one couple that's doing emotional brain training, they say, well, my husband gets more like his trigger is to go into hiding and watch Netflix, and mine is to overeat and become endlessly talkative where I will not stop talking. So sometimes couples have opposite circuits, but they're equally ineffective, and they really block some of the joy of loving intimacy that was really what the brain needs. The brain just is a big love bug. It wants that loving kindness, and if we don't know how to switch off those circuits and essentially rewire them, we get triggered more and more. The older we get, the more triggers we get.
So if you're so adamantly stressed out as a human being, how do you tell yourself that joy is important? How do you get your mind to be wired for joy? How do you make a change if you notice this constant cycle of I'm stressed out, I'm being triggered constantly? And I'll give you an example for me. If I have too many things coming at me at one time, right? Like I was talking about the messages, I'll have, somebody send me an email and then a text message and then this. I literally get angry. It makes me angry. And I'm like, listen, I know you need to get a hold of me. I'm in the middle of doing something that I need to complete. So I'm not dropping everything just to answer your question right at this particular moment. That would be the equivalent of, me saying, oh, hey, Dr. Mellon, hold on 1 second. My phone just buzzed. I got a text message. I have to stop our interview so I can do that. That's like, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to myself. I'm doing a disservice to you. But the other person on the other side who's trying to message you, they don't care about any of that. They just want what they want and they want it now, right?
Exactly.
And that makes me stressed out that they feel that that's okay, and
right.
so that's one of my triggers. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to this person. David, don't call me anymore. Stop it, Jane. How do you get past that? Besides turning your phone off, obviously. But
well, you know what? It's really easy if you process emotions. You can't think your way out of it, and you can't tell yourself you shouldn't feel that way. So we have a simple numbering system, and we number the 5 levels of stress from 1, which is joy, all the way down to 5, which is the reptilian brain's in charge. So you would check in with yourself and say, instead of saying, why am I so angry, or why are they doing this? You say, what number am I? Oh, cool. I'm at 5. And you go to the app, you touch on it a few times, and it spirals you up through your emotions back to 1, where you say, I'm not going to answer that phone. Next time I think I'll turn it off. So it helps you with your stress, and then you don't have to clean up the mess afterwards. I have a son who just had a baby, and I went down to his house to visit, and I said something like stupid, something inappropriate. And then I went back and I said, I'm sorry I said that. And he says, Mom, you should have checked your number. if you checked your number and then paused a moment enough to use the app and check your stress number and get up to 1 again, you wouldn't have to apologize all the time. So the idea is what happens is the way you learn how to wire your brain for joy is to use the tools. Because what I discovered in 2007 was when we really discovered the full range of tools of emotional brain training. And when I did it, I would give it to people in the app and say, here, give it a try. And they'd say, great. And they say, wait a minute. In 2 minutes, I go from being like the nastiest person with all this aggression to being someone who says, hey, I can deal with this. And they said, that's really scary. I don't know if I want to feel that good right away. So part of adjusting to the emotional brain training is to appreciate that you have amazing powers in your emotional brain that have never been used, but we haven't needed them to be used. But there's so much stress now that if we don't use those emotional pathways in the brain and express those emotions and get through them all in your head, nobody knows what you're doing. They just know that you stop looking nasty and you start looking nice, that we end up in having stress epidemics, anxiety, depression, diabetes, obesity, addictions. These are all just symptoms of those wires down in the reptilian brain. We can actually switch them off in real time, and over time, as you switch them off over and over again, they break. And then you have freedom from that drive to do that. And that's what it's about, freedom.
Yeah, and we all want freedom, especially from stress that causes you to have an emotional reaction, and that continued cycle over time, I feel, would probably put somebody in a level where, I mean, it's one thing to be stressed out and be able to come out of that stressed out feeling. It's another thing to be in that highly tense, stressed moment for, days and days at a time, which, I feel would lead to, severe, mental anguish. You're going to end up being depressed and, having all kinds of, funky thoughts and funky actions and things that you necessarily wouldn't do if you could just take a step back, right? Just back up.
You can't take a step back when your thinking brain is offline because the reptilian brain is in charge. So this is what I recommend. First, find your own particular thumbprint of signs that the reptile's in charge. That's brain state 5. And then when you get there, know that you're going to like it. Because the reptile has convinced us that when we're stressed out, overloaded, it's actually its own addiction. And so give yourself some space and say, come on, I know I'm going to want to stay in this addicted state because my brain's used to it. And I'm going to come out of it just use that app. I'm going to spiral up and I'm going to feel great. And then you teach it to your children, your spouse, so that you have this emotional connection. So you even have a language to talk about stress. You say, is your reptile in charge right now, or is your thinking brain? What number are you? So we've got to deal with stress overload, which most people are experiencing, with some neuroscience-based tools that will get us out of that state so we're back in control.
So you talk about control, and, I think that any individual, you think about like martial arts, right? Martial arts, the whole idea behind martial arts is to be able to, train for control, right? Being able to control your emotions and being able to control your actions. And if you're trying to, maintain that control, and you have all of these, stress circuits that are happening and you need to, reprogram, for your emotional brain, what are those common stress circuits look like? So that way we can, try to maybe avoid some of those.
Great. I can teach you two things. One, which ones to look for, and then how to spiral out of it in the moment. And once you experience spiraling out of it, then you're more aware that you actually have more power than you know. So most people have a mood circuit. So think about, what is the mood that you get stuck in? It seems like it's like a psychological problem. It is not a psychological problem. It's a biological problem. It's a wire in your reptilian brain, which is so much better than having a psychological problem, because a wire you can weaken and break. So right. What is the mood that is sort of a knee jerk? It tends to be hostility, depression, anxiety, panic, shame, numbness, or mania. So particularly with people that are really into their work, they'll get into this over control where they really believe they had the illusion that they're in control, but actually the reptile is in control. And that's why the relationships aren't going well in other areas. In addition to the mood circuit, everyone has a relationship circuit, because given enough stress, We're either, the brain makes us, it forces us, it's just the way the brain works, to either distance from other people and be removed, not care how they feel or what they need, or get so needy that we only focus on them and we forget to take care of ourselves. Everyone has a work circuit, because everything from your childhood, all these circuits from childhood come out at work, and everybody has a go-to for a habit, whether it's overeating, it's too much sugar, it's drinking, it's whatever that is, or overworking, that's their go-to. So your automatic go-tos that are harming the one most important thing, which is relationships. The most sensitive aspect of life to relationships the most sensitive to stress is relationships. So you know whether your thinking brain is in charge or your reptile based on 3 aspects of intimacy. If you have emotional closeness in your relationship, so you can give and receive love, if you have sensual, sexual pleasure, the major blocks to sexual satisfaction in both men and women is stress. And if you can get together with friends and laugh, have a belly laugh and have if that's going on, your thinking brain is probably online, and your reptilian brain is on holiday, which is perfect.
Hey, I'm hitting most of those, so that's good.
Good. I want to talk about your daughter. How old is she?
She's 6.
She's 6. At that age, you should get the app and teach her the tools to flow from negative emotions to positive ones. And that's one of the big discoveries of EBT, is that we're told that we shouldn't have negative emotions. And we're here all the time that we should just be in compassion and love. And that is the worst thing for your brain. All this positive psychology just makes people guilt tripped, and it's very bad for their brain.
Yeah,
What's best for your brain? What?
Go ahead. What's best for the brain?
Your brain is a muscle. You've got to work it. And it has 5 different levels of stress, right? One is when the thinking brain is in charge, all the way to being, that's joy, all the way being to stressed out, that's 5. If you're not in every single level all day long, you're not working that muscle. But the idea is, if you suppress your emotions, because you're not supposed to get angry. Men are given a really bad trip about being angry. Women are told they're not feminine if they're angry. It turns out if you can't express your emotions starting with anger and flow through them, then you have to stay on sort of a false high and pretend you feel great. You repress your emotions. The reptilian brain takes over, and you come home at night and you start snapping at people and you say, why am I losing it? I'm losing it because I suppress my emotions all day. With EBT, you learn how to flow through your emotions. It's in your own head. Nobody knows it. It's an app. And what you do is you flow through. Can I give you an example of how to flow through emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you give an example, you bring up a really good point. And, talking about my daughter, that's something that is probably a conversation that we have probably on an every other day basis. I'll give you a quick example. I'll say, to my daughter, hey, can you please clean your room? Right? She gets angry, right? And a lot of parents will be like, oh, stop getting angry. You can't do that. You need to go clean your room. Well, I've told her many times, it's okay to have feelings. Like, you need to have the feelings. Like, please feel them. I said, but don't let your feelings dictate your actions. Like, you can go through the cycle in your brain where, oh, I'm upset that I don't want to do this. But at the same time, that's something that needs to be done because, as a parent, I'm trying to teach my child to be self-sufficient, clean up after herself, those types of things, all things that are like important life skills that a human being needs to have to be able to function in society, right? Wash your clothes, do your dishes, brush your teeth, put your stuff away, don't make a mess, those types of things. And a lot of those things are also stressful in some circumstances because you're like, oh, I have to do the dishes, all that makes me angry. But, I always tell her, like, it's okay to have emotions and feel a certain way. You've just got to be able to work through those emotions so you can get to a point of still being active, still being able to take action and execute items that need to be done on a daily basis.
Well, what you just said should be in every parenting manual. And the operative word there is work through the emotions. But what's new in science is you work it through in a very efficient way that all brains work the same way. Can I show you what happens? how you can work them through. I can't wait to have her express her anger next time, because you're going to give her this simple little tool and she's going to move through them and she's going to give you a big hug and say, oh my gosh, you're the best daddy in the world and I did clean up my room or whatever. This is how the brain works. Is the first thing is, and again, it's everything you've been told that you shouldn't do is wrong. Again, you can't think your way out of it. You have to feel your way. You have to work through the emotions, express and move through the emotions. And it starts with, my mother always taught me, do not complain. Okay. And she called me Lori. My name's Laurel, but she always called me Lori. She says, Lori, now don't complain. Well, it turns out that in the brain loves it when you complain. So I'm going to be your daughter. And you've just taught me how to use emotional brain training. And you're going to say, oh, now just go ahead. You have your feelings. And you say, just do it this way. And she says, okay, the situation is, I don't really want to clean this up. I don't really want to have that. Just by complaining a couple statements, she wakes up the reptilian brain, and just the circuit in the brain that you want to stop so that she can move through doing things she doesn't want to do opens up like a little flower. It opens up so you can rewire it. She's complained. And then you do the next thing you're told not to do, which is anger. If you don't honor your right to protest feeling bad, then you go into depression or anxiety. The major cause in our country of depression and anxiety is that people don't have a safe, structured, simple way to express their anger and move through it. So she's going to say, what would she say? She'd say, I'm going to give you the lead-ins and you pretend you're your daughter. Okay, it's just lead-ins and then you complete the sentence with your own, whatever comes up. Okay. So I feel angry that you be your daughter and I'll be the app. I feel angry that
my dad wants me to clean my room.
I can't stand it that
I have to clean my room all the time.
I hate it that.
Why can't I just do it when I want to do it?
Great. And notice the reptilian brain is calming down, because that's why expletives work so well. When you express anger, it's the quickest way to get the thinking brain to come back online, but it's got to be followed with the other emotions. I feel sad that. I feel a little sad. This is her. A little, just one. I feel a little sad that.
If I don't clean my room, I might be in trouble.
And then the next feeling, this is natural. It's universal for all brains of humans. I feel afraid that.
If I don't clean my room, I'd probably be in trouble.
And I feel guilty that I
know that I need to clean my room and I should do it.
But then what happens is the brain has a negative bias. So after you've expressed the negatives, the positive feelings that help you go forward and do those things you don't want to do comes up. So just notice in your body, I feel grateful that, and you can lead her through this. I feel grateful that.
I even have a room.
I feel happy that.
There's books in my room that are on the floor that I need to clean up.
And I feel secure that.
My dad is here to help me.
And I feel proud that I
finally cleaned my room.
Woohoo! Okay, do you see?
Yeah.
A minute and a half. And it's the same for adult brains, for any age, you move through it. And sometimes what happens, if she was more stressed, you'd use the same process, but two things can come up. Sometimes it just moves to, if it's just a situation, it just moves to the positive emotions and then you feel great. And the second, but if you have some old leftover hurts from the past, typically from adverse childhood events or later stress, you have these like big, thick circuits in the bottom of your brain that you really need to break up because they keep on getting triggered. And then you wonder why you're doing the same thing over and again. And the most common kind is a trigger where the brain tells you to escape into something that doesn't really work. So it tells you that you get your safety from going numb, or your safety from drinking too much, or your love from distancing and judging. And these are just basic patterns in the brain. You use the same kind of system, and it begins to break up those patterns. So instead of living with those triggers, you clear them.
Clear them, yeah, because that's where the joy comes in, right? Once that gets
and that's
cleared.
Where the joy. So one other way of doing this is that the fact is joy, and it sounds like it's an emotion, which it is, but in neuroscience terms, it's like the best. It's the optimal state of the brain. So the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are working together, the top and the bottom of the brain, and the brain to the body. Everything's connected, and the emotion that you experience is perfect chemistry in your body, perfect physiology. It's like the best wellness pill you could take. And when you feel that joy, and the joy is when you feel present with a slight glow because you're doing something for the right reasons, like integrity or authenticity or freedom or intimacy or these or vibrancy, and you feel it in your body. And so you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, I know that I've got to get this next cure for cancer in there, and I got to get to the next place in this project so that my reports are going to be able to do all right and all this. But what am I really doing? I'm really training my brain to shut off the reptile, activate the thinking brain, and get from stress to joy. So you actually declare that what you're going to do is be in that state of joy as much as you can throughout the day. And this is what you say to yourself. And really, this is great to tell your daughter as well. Say, I am creating, I'm not waiting for it to happen, I'm creating joy in my life. Just say it. Tell me how you feel when you say it. I
am creating joy in my life. Well, it feels happy to talk about joy in the first place, instead of being like, I'm going to create sadness in my life.
I know. And misery, and let the reptile win. And then as soon as you notice that you're not in joy, let's say you're in traffic, or let's say, your computer goes on the fritz or whatever, or just you have a stomach ache, or you really don't want to work on this project, or you're confused, you just go to the EBT icon, touch it on your phone, go through the emotions, and you get back to joy. You say, cool, I can't change everything in the world, but I changed inside me. And now I can think well. Now I can move forward with purpose.
Now I have clarity so I can change the world.
I can change the world. So let me tell you why cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what we've been using in our country, and there's this big myth that it works. If cognitive behavioral therapy worked, we wouldn't have epidemics of behavioral problems. Unfortunately, you can't cognitively think your way to turn off the reptile. You need to express your emotions and process your emotions. And so what happens is in the traditional therapies, you go in and they say, I'm going to change my behavior. Well, the reptile's in charge right now. And when the reptile's in charge, because we're all in chronic stress, you're going to overdo it, underdo it, feel stalled, overcommit, fall apart, blame yourself. So all you do differently in Wired for Joy and EBT is you say, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple minutes and get back up to that connected state, and then I'm going to decide what to do. And when you decide it from a state of purpose, there's moderation, there's reasonableness, and you follow through. And the whole time you're doing it, you feel good about yourself because you know that you're doing it for the right reasons and it's not overwhelming. So people stay with it. That's the idea.
And I love how you put that too, because I absolutely hate having that feeling of being overwhelmed, right? It creates a sense of anxiety for me, and that's why I always tell people that, the idea of multitasking is, yes, you can do two things at once, but can you do two things at once well? Right. If you're, I find myself doing this all the time. I'm like starting to type an email to someone, and then I get distracted by someone that comes in my office with some other thing that they need help with, and I haven't finished my email, right? And then I'll go, oh yeah, what do you need? And then now I'm in a browser or something on my computer, and I'm looking for, whatever I needed to help them. But my poor little email that I was working on before is just still sitting there. So in my brain, I'm telling myself I'm multitasking, but really all I did was change tasks. And now am I in a space where when I get back to that email, I can be in the same frame of mind I was when I started it? And so, a lot of those things are stress creators and triggers and those things as well that cause different moods to happen. And I found myself a lot of times now having to just tell people, I see that you're there. I'm right in the middle of an email. Let me finish this. I need 5 minutes. You can either stand there and watch me finish writing the email or come back in 5 minutes, but I got to finish this first before I can address yours, because I feel that I owe this person who I'm emailing my undivided attention, and I also owe it to you to give you my undivided attention, and I can't do both.
And now I want to show you that there's two parts to EBT. The first is process your emotions, shut off the reptile, activate the thinking brain. But you referred to something about we didn't really come to Earth to hang out and watch television.
Right.
Well, that has a biological basis because, now they say, oh, just kind of chill out and feel really good. You first want to process your emotions and work through them so that in a couple minutes you do feel great. But at that moment, something is triggered in your mind, because we are put on earth to make the world a better place, to clean up our room after ourselves, to try different projects, even if they don't succeed. So there's a second part to EBT that makes you powerful. Would you like to try it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So just in that moment when you said, well, so I decided just to tell them to wait because I didn't feel right about it, you actually used EBT and you didn't know it, because this is a natural process. So I want you to do it in a more formal way so you can do it over and over again really easily.
Okay.
So you said to yourself at some point, I expect myself to do the best I can to what? That made you make that decision that you were going to, I expect myself to do the best I can to
be the best I can be. I mean,
great, perfect.
Provide
now,
my attention.
Once you say that, you're going to give yourself some encouragement, like being a good dad to yourself and saying something positive, like I can do that, or that's important. What's some positive words you'd like to hear to give you encouragement?
I always like to hear from coworkers and upper management that I did something that they wanted done correctly. I did it well.
Right.
They're happy with my performance.
And for you to say no to those people and try to do the best you can in the world, what is the hard part? It's also called the essential pain of life that you'd have to face. Is it that it takes work? Is it that I may not do it perfectly? Is it that some people might reject me? What are the developmental hard part for you that if you accepted it would be easier to flow forward? What would that be? What's the hard part for you in saying no to them?
Well, I've gotten to the point now that it's not really that hard for me to tell people no. But no, I mean, I don't want to disappoint them. I feel
some people may be disappointed, but then you collect the reward. But the reward of doing it, what is the purposeful reward that's going to activate the reward centers in your brain? Is it authenticity, vibrancy, integrity, intimacy, spirituality, freedom, feeling safe inside, sanctuary? What motivated you, a purpose to take that action?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always want to come from a place of integrity, right? I've been in business and been doing what I do for a long time. I consider myself a thought leader in the space, and in order to impart my knowledge to somebody, I have to be attentive. I have to be there. And so sometimes it requires me to tell somebody no, to wait just a second, so that way I can be attentive, I can be there, and I can be my authentic self.
So what you're doing is focusing on joy, and joy is all about having a thinking brain working. So you have in your mind, maybe it's conscious or unconscious, your higher purpose for doing what you're doing, and nothing can get in the way of that. If you have that higher purpose, you're saying, I'm doing it for integrity, so I'm going to do hard things, and I'm passionate about it. This is the one rub, is that it's very hard to tell the difference. And this is when we look at other people around the world that are having difficulty, people that are supposed to be of good purpose and they're doing things that we think aren't right. The problem with the brain, the human brain, is it sometimes can't tell the difference whether you're at the thinking brain of brain state 1, where you can bring to mind higher purpose. You've already processed your emotions for that momentary period, and it flips to the reptile. Okay, so you can go to the very heights of doing great things, and you're always staying connected to yourself in joy and watching for the fact that almost anything can become addictive. And so when you notice that your relationships are a little bit out about, or you can't really find one of those purposes, that you're really about ego, not purpose, the reptile has won. And what we need to do is switch off the reptile, switch back. It only takes a couple minutes, and you're back in that state of connection and control and purpose.
Purpose, yep. That is, an important word. The word purpose. Like I said earlier, I don't wake up every day to watch TV. I wake up every day because I have a family that I have to take care of. I am very fortunate because I get to come to work and do things I absolutely love, and people pay me to do that. And so I'm able to go do things that bring me joy. And in return, I get joy, I get knowledge, And I get to reciprocate that knowledge backwards to my family, and I also get to reciprocate the monetary component of the efforts that I've put forth in what I do back to my family as well. Because ultimately, for me specifically, my purpose, having a 6-year-old daughter and having a wife that we've been together for over 20 years, my purpose is making sure that I'm there for them. I'm a good provider. I'm a good father. I'm a good husband. And that we have great lasting memories. I had done an interview with a gentleman last week, and he had struck a chord with me, and he asked me like, "Hey, Brian, well, how do you know at the end of your life that like you truly lived a good life?" And I said, I don't really know. I feel like maybe if I'm successful. And he goes, "Nah, it's none of that." He's like, if your kids are grown up and they're happy? And I went, oh man, that's great. Because as a father, that's something that I think about all the time. You see all of this, stuff that's in the news. You read the newspaper. You look at social media. You see young people in flux with their emotions on a constant basis, and probably a lot of the reasons why we have school shootings and stuff like that, as kids are just not able to deal with their emotions. And so I always told myself, just as being a father, is I think it's just important that we provide a level of stability, because I don't want my child to be one of those children. I want my child to grow up and be happy, and to know that she's loved, and to know that she's allowed to have emotions, but also understand that she is in control over her own destiny. And having emotions is one thing, but working through those emotions so that way you can still be positive, be happy, and not sulk or be stuck in those areas. For me, that would be probably the epitome of a successful Ryan, right? Knowing that my 18-year-old daughter, however many, 12 years from now, is a happy, well-adjusted human being and knows what she wants in life, and she's ready to go tackle it.
Woohoo! Okay, so the biggest thing we give our children, I worry sometimes about money, because I've chosen a path of nonprofit, and sometimes what am I going to leave my children? And I thought, Laurel Mellin, you are crazy. There's only one thing you really leave around you when you're gone, and that is the emotional circuits in your brain to process all of life's complications and difficulties and traumas back to a state of joy, and have that renewal going on, because you know how to work through your feelings. You pass it along to your children. They pass it along to their coworkers. They choose a spouse like that, and to their children. So I have a little first grandchild for me, and his name is Henry. And I'm just thinking about, what do I want to give Henry? And I want to give him the circuits in the brain, the pathways in the brain to move from stress to joy. And truly, that's all he really needs.
Wow, that's awesome. Dr. Laurel Mellin, thank you so much for being on Finding Your Frequency today. It was just a wonderful conversation about the brain and, your EBT method, and, tell people where they can find more information about you, download the app, all that fun stuff. Of course, we want them to go read your books. You guys can go to Amazon and search Dr. Laurel Mellin. I did it, and I found the books easy peasy. They were right there. But what else do you want the listening audience to know about how to connect with you or connect with EBT?
What I'd love you to do is go to EBT. It's emotional brain training, ebt.org. And the reason for that is we want you to get the app so you can get immediate results, so you can see how smart your brain is, how it can actually process these emotions, and it clears away the emotional clutter. It gets you back to that state of connection and well-being and joy and control. So that's ebt.org. And in fact, when you go to get a membership so that you can get the app, just go ahead and put in the word joy for the coupon. It gives you a discount so that you can get an ongoing access to that, as well as a free session with an EBT coach, so you by phone, so you can go through the app the first time with someone else, and you can feel that joy in your body. It feels so good. So ebt.org, and either of those two books. If you're a stress eater, definitely get the stress eating solution, because stress in the brain is what causes all those appetites. And if you get rid of the stress in the brain and get that reptile off your back, it's going to be easier to eat healthy. And then anyone can use the stress overload solution, because you're going to get at your mood circuit, relationship circuit, work circuit, habit circuit. Just clear away that clutter and get back to your true self, which is all about joy.
Joy. Yes, that's
Joy.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Mellon. Remember, she's a New York Times bestselling author, health psychologist, associate clinical professor at School of Medicine, University of California, San Francisco, and founder of the emotional brain training method. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go out there every day. Make it a great day. Be happy, be joyful, be thankful. And remember to go check out the emotional brain training method so that way it can help you work through your stress, your emotions, and get to being more positive and joyful and living the best life that you can. Go out there and find your frequency. I'm Ryan Treasure, and you're tuned in to Finding Your Frequency right here on voiceamerica.com.